Hello, everybody. That's right. It's Saturday. I hope you're having a sailorific Saturday. Today, I'm going to be making a theory about red mist. So let's get into it. But first, let's tell the story. Red Mist begins with Squidward preparing to practice his clarinet in his room as SpongeBob and Patrick play merrily outside. Squidward wraps his mouth around the clarinet and is only able to play one note before being interrupted by someone knocking on the door. He walks down and opens the door and discovers that a traveling salesman is at his door. The salesman, a Scottish fish, asks if he could have a moment of Squidward's time. Squidward tells him that he isn't interested and slams the door in the man's face. Walking back to his room, the salesman begins knocking again, and Squidward opens the door angrily. The salesman, looking very upset, tells Squidward the red mist is coming, and proceeds to walk off, confusing Squidward. Squidward walks back to his room and finally begins to play the clarinet. After performing several off-key notes, SpongeBob and Patrick begin laughing outside, interrupting Squidward yet again. Squidward walks over to the window and shouts at the two, telling them he needs to practice for a concert he will be performing at. SpongeBob and Patrick both apologize tearfully. Squidward, unsure of himself, walks back and begins playing his clarinet again, this time uninterrupted. The scene then fades to red, over the course of 12 seconds and perhaps by glitch. The same scene is repeated once more, which is somewhat common in rough cuts of animation. However, this time Squidward's eyes have been replaced with new and more realistic eyes with red pupils. Clearly not real, but more realistic than CGI, TV, or animated. The audio is also completely absent from the scene, save for occasional clicks and whistles. After the repeat of the previous scene, a new scene begins with the same red eyes, but at the theater where Squidward is playing his clarinet. The frames in the animation skip every 4 seconds, but the sound remains synced. After an unruly performance, everyone boos Squidward in a cruel-sounding way. SpongeBob and Patrick seen in the crowd booing Squidward too, very uncommon for them. The scene pans to reveal the same Scottish salesman sitting next to them, also booing as Squidward walks back to his home with his head in his tentacles. What's odd is that the scene actually shows him walking to his house with nothing happening in the background for the 3 minutes and 50 seconds before abruptly cutting to red for another 20 seconds just as he arrives to his house. A new scene appears back to the original cartoon eyes with Squidward sitting in the chair in his room tonight with a blank look on his face for roughly 30 seconds before starting to sob softly again. This audio is completely missing for most of the scene until the sobbing begins. This is when the sound of a slight breeze through a forest can be heard in the background. It's also begin very mildly zooming in, Squid's face only noticeable. If you compare the second of frames side by side, the sound of him sobbing can suddenly be heard very loudly and severe as the screen screen twitches in on itself briefly. The salesman laughing can also be heard echoing in the background. After another 30 seconds, the screen blurs and twitches violently in a single frame, flashes over the screen. Upon pausing is exactly in the frame, the viewer would see a real-life mutilated dead child, eviscerated, and with one of his eyes popped out, a photograph of his shadow visible. After this photograph is seen, it cuts back to Squidward sobbing, much louder than before, with what appears to be blood running from his eyes. Instead of tears and the sound of the salesman still heard, the sound of the wind in the forest is also played at a much louder volume. But now, with the sound of branches snapping and the screams of a young boy heard, the salesman can be heard saying, "Do it twice," the second time, sounding much angry after 20 more seconds. Another single frame appears, this one of an eviscerated and killed 8-year-old girl lying on her stomach again with the shadow of the photographer. The scene reverts back to Squidward, now with the same realistic red eyes from before, completely silent and no longer sobbing. The sound of the forest can no longer be heard, and another 3 seconds later, and it cuts back to the sobbing, the sign piercing loud, and the sound of the forest heard. The scream can be heard next to the song Amazing Grace. And now Squidward is staring at the viewer with the same realistic red mist eyes. The screen shows the children can be heard screaming and crying in the background. After around 30 seconds of this, The scene pans out to reveal Squidward holding a gun. He puts it to his mouth and pulls the trigger. His blood splatters and covers the screen. The screen shows Squidward dead, while the red mist is coming once again echoes. Mr. Hillenberg is obviously angry at this. He demanded to know what the heck was going on. There was an investigation due to the nature of the photos, but nothing came of it. The child scene was identified, and no clues were gathered from the data involved, nor physical clues. And that is the story. Obviously fake, Red Mist is fake. Or is it? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Sit back, because the theory is just beginning. So, I wouldn't have even made it this theory, because it's just a story, if it wasn't for the episode Random Land. In this episode, SpongeBob and Squidward are tasked with delivering a Krabby Patty to a town called Random Land. But the way that you get there is you have to act randomly. No one knows how to get there, and no one knows if you can get out. But it's a very certain scene that made me want to do this theory. There's a scene when SpongeBob and Squidward come across a bunch of doors, and Squidward opens a door and sees this. So, is Red Mist real? Well, Squidward's suicide, aka Red Mist. The most direct reference to Red Mist is the well-known Squidward suicide, the creepypasta, which was titled Red Mist in the original story. Although this isn't an official episode, the legend itself has become deeply ingrained in SpongeBob lore. Mentioned the widespread belief in this episode's existence, and how fans have speculated it might represent Squidward's inner turmoil of dark alternate dimensions. Disturbing scenes in canon episodes. Season 4, Episode 12, SquidBob Tentacle Pants. In this episode, Squidward's face is merged with SpongeBob in a highly disturbing manner, almost resembling a grotesque or horrifying image one might associate with creepypasta stories. Season 1, Episode 4, Naughty Nautical Neighbors. There's a scene where Squidward has distorted facial expressions, especially when he's frustrated or angry. You could analyze how Squidward's facial features often distort more than any other characters, potentially symbolizing inner madness. Background visuals and hidden details. There are a few unsettling moments hidden in background scenes. Graveyard Shift, Season 2, Episode 16. Episode is known for its eerie atmosphere. If you look closely at the backgrounds, you can see darkened figures or shadowy objects in the corner, which some fans speculate might hint at the presence of other entities in Bikini Bottom. I Was a Teenage Gary, Season 1, Episode 13. After being accidentally injected with snail plasma, Squidward undergoes a painful transformation, behaving like a creature rather than himself. Squidward's psychological state. Many episodes show Squidward in deep despair, frustration, or anger, which aligns with the tone of Red Mist creepypasta. Example: Dying for Pie. Season 2, Episode 4. Squidward believes SpongeBob is going to die, and ends up in a panic state. Are You Happy Now? Season 8, Episode 18. This episode controversially shows Squidward battling depression, and even briefly hints at self-harm, such as when he appears to shove his head into an oven, suggesting that Squidward may be more susceptible to supernatural or psychological torment, as Red Mist describes. Visual references to horror and red imagery. Several episodes they use red lighting and eerie imagery that could connect to Red Mist. SpongeBob in Random Land, Season 12, Episode 13, like I said earlier. This episode features distorted, nightmarish versions of the characters, and a scene with Squidward staring into a disturbing alternate reality version of himself. Fans have drawn comparisons to the visual style and mood of the Red Mist story. Red visual cues in Squidward's scenes. Whenever Squidward is extremely angry or agitated, the show often uses intense red backgrounds or changes in lighting. These red visuals could be seen as a nod to the Red Mist story. Symbolic locations. Squidward's house, Squidward's isolated, dark, and somewhat eerie house, represents his loneliness and mental struggle. The location could serve as a metaphorical trap or a cursed place where his darker emotions manifest. Rock Bottom, Season 1, Episode 17. Rock Bottom episode is known for its unsettling tone and severe atmosphere. The bizarre scent and eerie mood could symbolize an alternate dimension or a state of mind where red mist might take form. Now knowing this evidence, it helps with a good foundation presenting both concrete references from the show and more symbolic interpretive clues that point to a darker undertone. So with that evidence, is red mist real? Well, the scene has been changed now to show Squidward as a baby, but there was an episode that brought it back. The episode in questioning is A Place for Pets, Season 13, Episode 1, when a health inspector comes in and says that Mr. Krabs has to choose between pets or people, and Mr. Krabs chooses pets. And there's a scene when Squidward is holding 2 red cups on a tray, and he sneezes, and the red cups go into his eyes, and he looks at the screen in a very familiar way. And so that is why I believe that red mist is in the same universe as SpongeBob, and is indeed real. Anyways, that was the red mist theory. I hope you enjoyed, because it took me a long time to make. About the entire day, actually. I had a lot of solid evidence, had to go in halfway and ask ChatGPT for evidence, so some of that might not have been factually. But I hope you enjoy. Stay safe. More theories along the way. And as always, thanks for watching.